You look in the mirror and something feels off, even though you cannot quite name it. Maybe your hair still looks the way it did 5 years ago, but you do not. Get ready, because these 7 rejuvenating haircuts are about to change how you see yourself at 80 and beyond. I research worst style and beauty mistakes and youth-boosting fixes for mature women, so you get simple, proven transformations that work instantly. Today we're perfecting 7 rejuvenating haircuts to look 10 years younger, rich and elegant at 80 plus. And by part 4, you'll want to pause and look in the mirror. I mean it. We are covering 7 stunning cuts, and 3 mistakes that quietly age you every single day. The very first mistake? I see it on 9 out of 10 women over 80. Let's go. 1. The soft layered bob. You've been wearing the same shape for years, telling yourself it's easy, it's safe, it just works. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Flat, blunt, one-length hair is quietly aging you every single day. The reason this mistake is so common is simple. Most stylists cut for convenience, not for lift, and gravity does the rest by your 70s and 80s. This one is everything. The fix is the soft layered bob, and it works with your face, not against it. First, the layers start at your cheekbone, not your chin, so movement happens right where your eyes naturally go. Second, ask for internal layering rather than blunt ends, because internal layers create body without losing length. Third, keep the perimeter slightly rounded instead of razor straight, since sharp blunt lines can look severe on softened, mature skin. Fourth, a whisper of face framing pieces near your jaw draws the eye upward and softens any fullness beneath the chin. And honestly, the 5th fix is the one I wish someone had told me sooner. Ask your colorist to add subtle dimension through the layers, because flat monotone color flattens the whole effect no matter how good the cut is. If you are still wearing one flat length past your shoulders, swap it for a chin to collarbone layered bob instead. If your ends have been blunt for a decade, swap them for soft, textured tips that catch the light. Your bone structure has always been beautiful. This cut simply lets people see it. Maintenance is refreshingly simple here. A trim every 8 to 10 weeks keeps the layers lifted and prevents the shape from collapsing into that flat, heavy look you're trying to leave behind. There is one thing about this cut that most women never expect. It photographs beautifully from every single angle, even the ones you usually avoid. And that confidence follows you off camera too. Because when a haircut works this well, you stop thinking about your hair and start just living your life. Wait until you see what mistake number 2 is doing to your natural texture. 2. Mistake 1 to avoid. Over-processed color. Have you ever wondered why your hair feels more like straw than silk lately? It is probably not your age. It is probably your color routine working against your hair's actual structure. Overprocessing is the first big mistake to avoid, and it is shockingly common after 80. Salons keep applying the same strength of color and bleach that worked on your hair decades ago, when your hair's protein structure has completely changed since then. Here are the fixes that actually protect you. First, ask specifically for demi-permanent color instead of permanent, because it deposits tone without the harsh lift that damages aging strands. Second, space out your color appointments to every 8 weeks minimum, giving your hair real time to recover between sessions. Third, request a bond-building treatment added directly into your color service, since this rebuilds the internal structure while you process. Fourth, avoid double-process color entirely if your hair already feels brittle, because 2 chemical services in one sitting is often too much for mature hair. And fifth, this one is simple but powerful. Ask your stylist to check your hair's elasticity before every single color appointment, because that one small check prevents most of the damage before it happens. If you're still going fully permanent every 4 weeks, swap it for demi-permanent every 8 weeks. If your stylist skips bond builders to save time, swap salons. Yes, that's simple. Your maintenance here is a weekly protein mask, because color-treated mature hair loses strength faster than you'd expect. There is one question you should be asking at your very next appointment, and it might completely change how your colorist treats your hair from now on. I've watched women go from straw-like ends to genuinely soft, healthy hair in just 2 color cycles once they made this one switch. The next cut on this list is the one my viewers ask about more than any other. 3. The silver shag with curtain layers. This one surprises almost everyone the first time they see it on a woman in her 80s. The silver shag with curtain layers looks effortless, but it is actually one of the most technical cuts on this entire list. The key insight is this. Shag layering, when cut correctly for mature hair density, adds visible volume exactly where thinning tends to show first, right at the crown and temples. Let's talk fixes. First, the curtain layers should start above your eyebrows, not at your hairline, because that placement opens up your entire eye area instantly. Second, request heavier layering through the crown specifically, since that's where most volume loss happens after 80. Third, keep the ends slightly choppy rather than smooth, because texture reads as fullness on camera and in person. Fourth, ask for face framing pieces cut at slightly different lengths, which creates natural movement without a single styling tool. And the fifth fix, honestly, is my favorite secret. A light texturizing spray at the roots before you even pick up a brush changes everything about how this cut falls. Swap heavy, smooth silver hair for shaggy, layered silver hair with movement. Swap a hard middle part for a soft side part that lets the curtain layers do their job. You needed to hear this. Maintenance is simple. A light texturizing product twice a week keeps the shag looking intentional instead of undone. I have seen this exact cut turn a tired grandma comment into "you look incredible" in the same week, from the same family members. There is a reason this cut ages so gracefully, and it has everything to do with what we're covering in the very next part. 4. The elegant textured pixie. You spent 20 minutes this morning trying to add volume to hair that just would not cooperate. That struggle ends with this next cut, and I promise you it is worth the pause I mentioned earlier. Here is why so many women resist the pixie, and why that hesitation is costing them. Most pixies are cut too uniform, too short all over, which can actually emphasize an aging jawline instead of softening it. The elegant textured pixie fixes this completely. First, length must vary across the head, longer through the crown, shorter at the nape, because uniform length is what creates that helmet look women fear. Second, ask for point cutting rather than blunt scissor work through the top, since point cutting creates soft texture instead of hard edges. Third, leave slightly longer pieces near your ears, which visually elongates your neck and softens your jaw. Fourth, request a subtle undercut layering beneath the top layer, giving you volume that lasts through humidity and long days. And fifth, this is the detail most stylists skip. Ask for the fringe to be cut on a diagonal rather than straight across, because a diagonal fringe is dramatically more flattering on mature bone structure. If your current pixie is uniform and short all over, swap it for varied length with a longer crown. If your fringe sits straight and heavy, swap it for a soft diagonal sweep. Yes, that's simple. Maintenance means a light pomade worked through with your fingertips, never a brush, to preserve the texture through the day. I have had women tell me this exact cut is the first haircut in decades that made them feel like themselves again. There is one thing about longer cuts you need to know before we move forward, because it changes everything about part 5. 5. The long layered lob with lift. Let's clear up a myth right now, because it has cost too many women too much confidence. Long hair after 80 is not the mistake everyone claims it is. Long hair with no internal structure is the actual problem. The key insight here is architectural. Length without internal layering simply hangs, and hanging hair drags the whole face downward, no matter how healthy that hair actually is. Here are your 5 fixes for a long lob that genuinely lifts. First, internal layering must start well above the length line, roughly at ear level, so the weight is distributed rather than pooled at the ends. Second, request graduated layering at the crown specifically, because that graduation is what creates lift at the root. Third, keep the overall length at or just past the collarbone rather than longer, since anything past that point tends to pull the whole face down. Fourth, ask for slightly rounded ends instead of a blunt line, which keeps the silhouette soft rather than heavy. And fifth, incorporate face framing layers that hit at the jaw and cheekbone simultaneously, creating 2 points of lift instead of 1. Swap a long blunt, 1-length cut for a long lob with internal graduation. Swap length past your shoulder blades for length that stops at or near your collarbone. This is the one that made a friend of mine stop mid-conversation and ask what changed, and she had known me for 15 years. Maintenance means regular internal layering touch-ups every 10 to 12 weeks, even if the length itself barely changes. There is a reason stylists call structured long hair the quiet flex of mature haircuts. The next mistake we're covering is one you are probably making with a tool you use every single morning. 6. Mistake 2 to avoid. High heat without protection. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. When was the last time you used a heat tool without any protectant at all? If it's been recently, you're not alone, and it's not really your fault. Nobody explained how differently heat behaves on hair that has changed texture over the decades. The key insight is that mature hair has a thinner cuticle layer, which means high heat causes damage in seconds rather than minutes, compared to younger hair. Let's fix this properly. First, lower your tool's temperature to 300 to 330 degrees, because anything higher is simply unnecessary for finer, more fragile strands. Second, always apply a heat protectant spray, and let it sit for a full 60 seconds before any tool touches your hair. Third, section your hair before styling, since smaller sections mean less repeated passing with the tool, which means less cumulative heat damage. Fourth, invest in a ceramic or tourmaline tool rather than basic metal plates, because even heat distribution matters enormously on fragile hair. And fifth, honestly, give yourself one heat-free day per week because your hair needs recovery time just like the rest of you does. If you're still using tools above 400 degrees, swap that habit for 300 to 330 degrees immediately. If you skip protectant to save time, swap in a lightweight spray that takes 10 seconds to apply. This one is everything. Your maintenance tip is simple. A monthly deep conditioning treatment reverses the small cumulative damage that daily styling creates over time. I've had women message me saying their hair felt noticeably softer within 2 weeks of this one change alone. Wait until you see the final cut on this list because I saved the most requested one for last. 7. The classic French crop with soft fringe. We've saved the most requested cut on this entire channel for right now. The classic French crop with soft fringe is elegant, low maintenance, and genuinely rare to see done correctly on mature hair. The reason it's so rarely done well is that most stylists cut the fringe too heavy and too straight, which can actually hide your eyes instead of highlighting them. Here is how it's done right. First, the fringe should be cut soft and slightly side-swept, never a hard straight line across the forehead. Second, ask for graduated layering at the sides that tapers gently toward the nape, avoiding any harsh geometric lines. Third, keep the crown slightly longer than the sides, because that small height difference is what reads as elegant rather than severe. Fourth, request texture through the fringe, specifically using point cutting so it moves naturally instead of sitting flat. And fifth, this cut relies on precision, so find a stylist who specializes in short mature cuts specifically, not just shortcuts in general. Swap a heavy straight across fringe for a soft side swept one. Swap uniform crop length for a slightly longer crown with tapered sides. There is one technique that changes how your entire face reads on camera, and it takes your colorist exactly 4 minutes to do. Adding warmth right at the crown where light hits first. I have watched this exact cut make women in their 80s and 90s look genuinely striking, not just good for her age, but striking full stop. You now have everything you need to choose the cut that fits you best, and I promise the right one is closer than you think. You just learned 7 rejuvenating haircuts and 3 mistakes that most women spend years figuring out alone, if they ever figured them out at all. Boom, your bone structure was always this stunning. Now it shows. Tell me in the comments which of these 7 cuts speaks to you the most, and which mistake were you making without even realizing it. Next time we're tackling the one accessory mistake that quietly adds 10 years overnight. Like this video, subscribe to Timeless Wisdom Path, and I'll see you in the next one.